I'm Kevin Carter. I run the Ogden Linux users group. So if you're ever up that way, stop on by. If you've never seen me present before, I'm a little rambly and all over the place. If you have any questions, just shout them out. So here we go. So what is two-factor authentication? Well, it's another name for... Stupid. Wow, you're a good computer today. Come on. For multi-factor authentication, which is an approach to authentication which requires a presentation of two or more of the three authentication factors, which are a knowledge factor, something the user knows, that would be like your password. A possession factor, something only the user has, this is usually a token of some sort. An inheritance factor, which is like your thumbprint and eye print, something the user is. So we're going to focus on the possession factor, and specifically that of the one-time password. So there's multiple ways one-time passwords can be implemented. Some common ones are SMS and email. Usually these you get like just a random code that is your password through those. There's the YubiKey, which we'll talk about here in a second, and HOTP and TOTP, which stand for HMAC, one-time password, and time-based one-time password. So for starters, we'll just quickly cover what an HMAC-based one-time password it does. You basically have a secret key, a counter, this just increments 1, 2, 3, 4, and those get passed into the HMAC function. And basically all that's doing is doing a little math and hashing those two values to create a one unique one-time key. The extension of that is the time-based one-time password, and it takes, again, the secret key, a timestamp. Usually this is what they call a time code, where it represents a block of 30 seconds usually, and then that's again passed through the HMAC hashing function, and then usually for these they get converted into either a 6-digit or an 8-digit number. And so that's just some background knowledge for when we go over this other stuff. So first up we have the YubiKey, which is a hardware device that you plug it into your USB slot and it identifies as a keyboard. They range from about $25 to $50, depending on what you get. There's a standard, which looks like this. There's a nano, which is just like little bitty thing, and a neo, which has NFC capabilities, so you can do weird stuff with a phone if you have that support. So that's what it looks like. Plugs into your USB. It's got a little light there in the center that turns on when it's plugged in, and then that gold piece is a capacitive button that you press in and it generates the codes.
So when you press the button, it actually types the code for you?
Yes, it dumps out a big bunch of characters usually. And so...
What's the other side of that look like, or are you getting into that later? Like, the other side that's actually being authenticated against, they've got the same...
We'll go over that. We can go over that in a second.
Okay.
So there's different configurations that the YubiKey can have. It comes default with the YubiKey one-time password. This is their custom OTP implementation. Let me plug this in and I'll show a bit of it. Oh, gotta pop out of full screen mode first. So I press the button, you see it dumps out all the things and a new line afterwards. And if we do it again, what you'll notice is that the first, I think, 12 characters are the same for both of them, and then the other 36 are unique. And what that is those first 12 are basically your user ID, and then the rest is your one-time password. And then for this one to verify it, this gets sent to YubiKey servers, where it takes your user ID, finds your secret key, and then uses that to verify that unique part. This is basically how that works.
So that the key, the first 12 is kind of like if you bought a new device, you would get a new one, or is that programmed onto the thing by you, or is it just comes with that?
When you buy the YubiKey, it comes pre-programmed with a key on there that's on their servers.
But it can be changed.
It can be
on
changed.
an actual device.
Yeah, we'll go over that here in a sec. So if I can find where my mouse is. It also supports Oath. Oath is basically kind of the organization that has spearheaded the HOTP and the TOTP. So it can do a version of HOTP generation. Since it doesn't have a clock on it, it doesn't really do TOTP.
Oath is what's used by the Google Authenticator, right?
Well, since Oath is basically the organization behind TOTPs, and Google Authenticator uses TOTP, so that's basically, yeah.
Are you thinking of OAuth though?
No, OAuth is different.
Yeah, you have to make sure that OAuth is different than Oath. It supports challenge response, which is where you like send a packet to the YubiKey and it can do something with that and send back a response. And it also supports a static password on it. So YubiKey has a piece of software called the YubiKey Personalization Tool. It's available for Windows, Linux, and Macs. And it allows you to completely control the configuration on the device. You'll notice that there's a slot 1 and a slot 2, so it can have two configurations on it at the same time. So by default, it comes with slot 1 programmed with the YubiKey one-time password. And you can see, there's the YubiKey OTP, the Oath, HOTP, static password, and challenge response. Supposedly, there's a way you can use the challenge response mode to get it to generate TOTP codes. So you send it the timestamp piece, and when you have both slots configured, the way it basically works is if you press the button on it for like 0 to 2 seconds, it uses slot 1, and for 2 to 5 seconds, then it uses slot 2. So then we have the supported applications. This is where it gets a little tricky. You've got plugins for things like WordPress and Drupal that you can use to enable YubiKey. I put LastPass. Most of the password managers support YubiKeys. I use LastPass, so that's what I put, but pretty much all of them do. And you can use it for computer logins. They provide a Windows tool, so you can set it up to use it for Windows. It doesn't work so well on a Mac just because their login system isn't very robust. And you can obviously use it on Linux, which we'll go over.
So in the static situation, it's not really any different than just a normal password, because anybody could do what you just did in essence and know what the key is.
Yeah.
Right. So, but if you're using like the YubiKey OTP or whatever you said, that would be a scenario where it would change and you wouldn't necessarily ever know what it is because it's being authenticated against YubiKey's system.
Yep.
Do I understand that right?
Yep.
Okay.
And just as a note, YubiKey runs authentication servers, which it talks to by default. Their software is open source, so if you wanted to
Set up your own.
set it up
backend.
in-house and only
Okay.
talk to it, you could do that.
Yeah, cool.
So if you set it up for like a static password,
It's just the same as the password in essence.
in essence, two-factor authentication is going to protect you from a couple of things. One is like a brute force attack, where they're just generating passwords against your login form, trying just different combinations. In theory, they could eventually figure out which password you used. So if you have two-factor authentication, they need both pieces. It's going to protect against that. And then it does protect against like a man-in-the-middle attack where they're recording what you're sending, whereas the one-time password is unique every time. So it should protect against that.
If you're running in static mode, in essence,
You're
as I understand it, you're not fulfilling the something you have mentality of because
You can't prove it because it doesn't change.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not at that point it becomes something you know in essence.
in essence, yeah.
So okay, I just want to make sure I understand that.
Yeah.
properly, what's
So
going on.
so like using a one-time password would protect you from the man-in-the-middle part. Using the static password wouldn't protect you from that, but it could protect you from the
Yeah.
brute force.
Yeah, sure.
I have a friend who uses his. He has his set up to use a static password, and the way he uses it is in applications that don't support two-factor auth. He types in his password for that site, and then and then appends the static password on there.
Yeah.
And so it's like a 64-character string that he doesn't know,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it adds a little bit of security, but you're right that a man-in-the-middle type attack would not do well with that.
Yeah, understood. I just want to make sure I understand it properly.
So demo time, because these always go so well. So first up, we've got just a little WordPress thing here. And we got, username Kevin, password. And we get into the admin. So come over to the plugins. And we've got the YubiKey plugin here. So we'll activate it. Now for the setup of this, we have to come to the YubiKey here, and it needs an API ID and key. You can get this from YubiKey's website. You put in your email address and you put, a one-time password here, like so. And it'll spit you out an ID and a key. So we put those in there. And then under our profile, we've put, we've enabled to use YubiCo and put in our key ID there. And we'll save that. And hopefully this works. So now when we see the login form, we've got username, password, and the OTP spot. So if we just put in our username and password, it's going to tell us that we need the YubiKey. We put those in, we put our thing in there, hit the button. Now we're logged in. So that's a simple WordPress one.
Was that checkbox below there to remember you on the site?
Yeah.
If you do that, what does it remember at that point?
Well, so that's just going to remember your session for the website.
It'll set a token that, like a cookie. It'll set a cookie with a token that'll let the site know if it's done properly, then the token that's set in the cookie is completely unrelated to your password and one-time password and stuff. That's just, it's the same.
Okay. So it wasn't
It's basically bypassing
Yeah.
authentication by saying, but it has a time limit and stuff like that.
All right, so that was WordPress. There's plugins like that for Drupal and Joomla and stuff that you can add YubiKey to your websites. So for your computer, so I've got a virtual machine running here. Username's Vagrant, password's Vagrant. Gets us into the machine. So for this, what we need is the aptitude install libpam ubico. So you want to install that. I've already got it installed here. Obviously, it's available for Ubuntu. I don't know about the other systems, but you can build it if you need to. And then, if you read the README, it suggests to run dpackage reconfigure for it. So it's going to pop this open, and it's going to ask for, again, our ID and our key for the API.
This is strictly for the one-time password setup.
Yeah.
Right?
And then it's going to give us our PAM configuration where we can select Ubico and click OK. And so what that did is, if you know much about PAM, there's all these configuration files for the different authentication methods that PAM uses. And it put in the common auth nope. So it put in the common auth file this line here, which auth required PAM YubiKey, mode client, try first pass, and then our API keys. And then what you need is in your home directory in a Ubico folder, you need this authorized YubiKeys file, which just has your username, colon, and then your ID. And if you have multiple user keys, I think you can put either a comma or a semicolon there and put multiple key IDs.
Yeah, question. Since this uses an API like a web service, does that mean that if you didn't have network connectivity, you couldn't log into your machine?
Yep.
Okay. Just making sure.
I'll go over that in a sec too. So if we bounce my SSH connection. So now I go to log in. It's asking for my YubiKey. I put that in. It's going to ask for my password. And I get in.
So the PAM module is the value that you put in your home directory is the account that they're trying to authenticate the key against. So you're kind of saying this is my, okay.
Yeah, so it first makes sure that the key you used is the key for your account, and then it sends it to Ubico and authorizes that that key is valid.
Okay. Cool.
You'll notice that it asked for the YubiKey first. That's because I forgot to change a piece of setup in here, which is in the SSHD config. There's this option right here on this line, which is challenge response authentication yes. This is usually off by default. You can turn it on for SSH. That allows it to do that multiple questions on the SSH where it asks for the YubiKey separate from the password. This is usually off by default. And what happens when it's off is that it does this. Service SSH restart. So in that mode, it'll just ask for my password. And what I do is I type in the password and then I push the key. And it works that way. So in that mode, it can pull your password apart from the key, so it can all come in on the same same line, basically.
Are all the YubiKeys the same length or something? Is that how they?
Yeah. It's always, I think it's a 48 character when it comes off that.
If you're using SSH keys to log in, will it still ask for the
SSH, your SSH keys take preference before passwords.
okay,
And technically an SSH key is two-factor authentication because
kind of
as long as your key has a passphrase on it, then it's something you have plus something you know to unlock it.
yeah.
So when we set up the Yubico on libpam, you'll notice that it put it in common auth, which means it's pretty much required for all authentication. So here we have the GUI login. If I try to log in with just the password, it tells me, nope, not going to work. But again, I can put in the one-time password, logs me in. Which is kind of cool, but like you said, it needs the internet to authenticate, so it's a bit dangerous. I like it for SSH login, especially for because sometimes I'm on terminals where I don't have my public key, and so it's a little bit easier to type my password, hit the one-time thing, and use it that way.
So is there an exception for root? So that if you don't have internet connectivity, you can still log in as root?
I believe when it sets it up that if you do not have that authorized YubiKeys in your home directory, then it doesn't require YubiKey at all.
That makes sense.
But it comes down to the PAM configuration on that. I'm not sure how that works exactly. If you look at the README that came with the libpam YubiKey, there is a offline validation mode which uses the challenge response. I've never set it up, so I'm not entirely sure how it works, but it is an available option. So that's the YubiKey. Let me turn it off from here so that when we continue on our demos that it's not causing a problem. So the problem I had, I used the YubiKey for a while. This was a while back when this was kind of new. But the problem I had with it is that it sets on my keychain. So I'm, sitting on my deck with my laptop doing stuff, and I need I go somewhere that needs two-factor authentication, and now I got to go in the house, find my keys, just so I can log into something. And that's annoying. So that brings us to Google Authenticator, which is a mobile application for generating TOTP codes. Looks like this. So it supports multiple things. You got them in there. It generates, new code every 30 seconds. That's how long they're valid for. But since this is the Linux users group, we're going to use FreeOTP, which is another mobile application for generating TOTP codes. It's made by the Fedora project, runs on iOS and Android. And basically what you have is the website will present you with a shared key. You put the shared key into it and it just starts generating codes pretty much. And that's
set up similar to the YubiKey in the sense that they also run back in.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't run a backend since the code is just generated based on the secret key and a timestamp. So, your phone generates that code. You send it to whatever is using it, and then they generate the same thing. And if it matches, that's how they validate it.
You basically put the key in on both places or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kind of like
Usually when you set it up, the site will give you a QR code.
Mm-hmm.
You just scan that with the app, and it pulls in the secret key.
Yeah.
So the site usually is the one who sets up the secret key and then gives it to you.
That's pretty cool. It's kind of like the Secure ID. I mean, I used that like 15 years ago when I was working for Silicon Graphics, where they give you a little keychain, and then the number on the keychain changes like every 60 seconds. And it's all timestamp based. So as long as the clock in your dongle matches the clock on the server, then that always works.
Yep.
But if you're running your own thing, like let's say it's Pam, you would be putting that private key on the local box itself. It's not going out to somebody or
Yep.
whatever.
Right.
Yep. And demo will go over that here in a sec. So again, we'll start with WordPress. If I can find my mouse. So here we've got the Google Authenticator plugin in WordPress. We activate it. And then all this needs for setup is to come to our profile. We click to activate the Google Authenticator settings. And then this is the secret. That's the secret key right there.
That was provided to you from Google
Yep.
when you.
Well, it's provided from the WordPress plugin,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah, it just generates a random
Yep.
key.
Local to that installation of WordPress or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
This is not going anywhere
Yeah.
else outside. So you can scan. So with the mobile application, you can enter in that key by hand if you wanted to. Most places provide this QR code. What that QR code has is basically it has that key in it, and then also a tag, which is basically, it will say like WordPress, so that when you're in your application, you got multiple ones that you can. It's got a name on it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to delete my key from here because I don't trust that it's accurate. And I'll rescan it, hopefully. Yep. So now if we log out, now we've got Google Authenticator code filled. Again, if we put in just our username and password, it's going to tell us that our code is incorrect. Put in our username, password, and then we generate a new code, 366182. Hit enter, and we're in. One thing you will notice in the user settings is there is a relaxed mode. This allows for if your times aren't synced, that it allows a 4-minute window instead of just a 30-second window. I think it's insecure, Your server should get the time from NTP and your phone should get it from a satellite, so it should be pretty accurate. So I've never had problems with clock drift causing me not to log in.
So Google Authenticator really doesn't have anything to do with Google other than
Just that they made a mobile application. Yeah, like I say, so the TOTP, the time-based one-time passwords, that standard was created mostly by Oath. Google may have had some input on it, but it was mostly created by Oath. And then Google just said, hey, Gmail's getting hacked a lot. We're going to tack this on there. And so
Google made it popular.
Google made it popular. That's kind of where, Gmail was the first big one that was like, hey, this is.
So they basically made this this client, the Google Authenticator client that you have, it doesn't really have, you don't have to have an account to use it with Google or anything like that per se. It's just really kind of a front end to generating these.
To generating codes, yep.
They were
Okay.
basically the first ones to not require you to have a little thing on your keychain.
Yeah.
Is what it
Yeah.
comes down to. So
Understood.
And that's why I like this better, because if I'm sitting on the deck with my computer and I need a code, my phone is usually with me and my keys aren't.
And the reason you would go with that, let's just say over the free OTP or whatever that you pulled up earlier, is simply because more people would support the Google thing of that, or is there?
No, they generate the same codes.
That's what I wondered. Yeah.
You know, there's about a dozen mobile applications that'll generate TOTP codes.
Okay.
So, you know, Google Authenticator is kind of
They
the
all
brand.
use the same kind of key.
Yeah, they all use the same. They all use the same mathematical formula.
Okay. Cool.
Yep. So,
yeah, if
You
you
know.
have the same secret key, you'll get the in the same,
same
time you'll
same
get the
time you'll get the
email.
same number out.
From Google Auth or free OTP or
Right.
whatever it is
Yeah.
you're
Yep.
using. Okay.
And like I say, I think free OTP is a better implementation than Google's, a little, frankly. The reason for that is if you can see that,
Mhm.
it's got no numbers on it currently. Google's generates numbers for all your accounts at the same time. So when you look at it, it's got nothing but numbers. Whereas with this one, it only generates when you touch it,
Yeah.
which makes it a little bit more focused for
Yeah.
using it. One warning I do have about this is a lot of websites just give you that QR code to scan, and you scan it and you just kind of continue on your way. It's kind of important that you write down this number, this secret key, because if you ever reformat your phone, lose your phone, you're not going to be able to get that secret key back, and then logging in becomes a hassle. So I would make sure you write those down somewhere.
In this scenario, every person attempting, in your example, like with WordPress here, every person attempting to log in would have that same unique number as you would.
No, they get, so if we had like multiple users on our WordPress blog here,
Uh-huh.
they would all get their own secret key.
Oh, okay.
And so, and you
Well,
know,
that secret key is your personal secret key, not the one that's used on the
Yep,
back end.
yep.
Okay.
it's just your account's secret key.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's WordPress. We'll jump over here to our boxing. So this has kind of the same setup. We aptitude, install, libpam, Google Authenticator. This libpam module is actually provided by the Google Authenticator team. You know, it lives up on Google Code. It can be compiled for any Linux, but it is their implementation of it, so hence the name. So this one we have to go user share doc libpam Google into the README. So we need to add basically this line right here to our PAM configuration. So we're going to start out by just adding it to SSHD. So here's the common auth. So I'm going to put that below the common auth. And then for this, we actually have to go into our SSHD config. And set that challenge response to yes. It requires it, unlike the YubiKey that can work with it not being enabled. SSH restart. So we put the Google Authenticator module after the common auth so that when we go to log in, it asks first for the password and then for the one-time password. And then what you need to do is run the Google Authenticator command. This will ask, do you want the tokens to be time-based? We say yes. It generates a gigantic QR code. The secret, so there's the secret key for our account on our Linux terminal here.
Google Authenticator is creating, in essence, your
Secret key.
username, as it were, for just the logged in user.
Yep.
Okay.
It creates some emergency scratch codes here, so that like if you did lose your phone, you could use one of these as the one-time password and it would log you in. So you could write those down and keep it somewhere safe. Then it's going to ask if we want to update the Google Authenticator file in our home directory. I'm going to say no just because I don't want to go through the steps. It will ask a couple more questions after if you say yes to update your file. It asks basically, do you want to allow a 4-minute window? Do you want to allow codes twice? So like if you're having like a weird connection issue, it will accept the same code twice. I turn that stuff off for security reasons and the same. So we'll log out of SSH again. Go to log in, it'll ask for our password. We'll put it in. It'll ask for our verification code. I need this machine. It's 492190. And bam, we're back into the machine. So that works great for SSH. It gets a little tricky for your GUI login. In theory, you can take that same line that you put in the SSHD one. So Ubuntu uses LightDM as its window display manager. Thank you. Which is where your login is. So in theory, if we took this line and put it at the bottom of this file, it would now require us to provide that code. And I did a lot of Googling on this, and was told. So this is KDE here. LightDM supports multiple front ends to it. So this is the KDE front end. I did a bunch of Googling, was told that it worked, was never able to get it to work. So I created a normal Ubuntu VM, which is running the Unity front end to LightDM. So when it comes up here, hopefully. Ubuntu. So here's Ubuntu. There's their login manager. If I can remember the password. So it asks for the verification code. I think it's this one. 483044. Type it in. It logs in. Works great. A little slow because it's Ubuntu.
Is this the same as the YubiKey in that if the account doesn't have that .google authenticator file, then it just ignores it altogether, or?
So that line that I put in the PAM configuration, so I just put in auth required, Google Authenticator.so. That's going to make it required for everything that hits it. There's a way in the PAM configuration that you can say that it's optional, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. I think it's like a try first pass option or something.
Yeah.
But so
if that file doesn't exist, it just skips it altogether or something.
Yeah, if you had your PAM set up that way, it would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So TOTP works here in Ubuntu with their login manager. It works for like if you lock the screen It'll ask for your password again, then your verification code again. Oops, typed it wrong. So it works pretty nice in Unity. After much Googling, what I found is that the main blog post that said that it works with KDE was written by the developer for the LightDM KDE front end, and he had created a branch that supported it, and that seems to have never been merged back into the main code. So for fun, if I can remember where these settings are. We'll remove the default one. Themes, user bar. We'll copy his branch of it. And then you'll notice this looks slightly uglier. But we put in the password, and now it asks for the code. Oh, ran out of time. And it works. So obviously LightDM has all the support for the interactions with PAM. Comes down to whether your front end supports it. I've been meaning to try to send a message to the developer, see if maybe he can get that merged in, because it'd be kind of cool to have it enabled on my computer too. Although my feeling kind of is it's good for SSH. If somebody has your computer, you're boned. Because even if your disk is encrypted, you have to put that Google Authenticator file outside of the encryption because it needs it before it logs in and stuff. And so it's going to be sitting there unencrypted, and they can get the secret key out of it. And so whether it's a useful thing for your laptop's login is debatable. And then finally we have, so for my last slide is a wonderful website called twofactorauth.org. We'll pop that open. This pretty much gives you a giant list of various web services and whether or not they support two-factor auth, and if they do, what implementation they support, type thing. So, you can see Dropbox supports both SMS and a software implementation that usually means TOTP. TOTP, yeah. Sometimes it's like a proprietary software implementation, like somewhere in here is social. So like Twitter supports a software implementation, but theirs is custom. They don't use TOTP. But a lot of these other ones are the Google Authenticator stuff. So, real nice to come through here and just kind of look for all the stuff that you use. You notice that banking is horribly lacking in security things. And, find the ones you use and start using two-factor auth on them. So that's mostly it.
Unlike the banks that like to call it two-factor auth when they have two things that you know.
Yeah. When you have to type in your secret question answer plus your password. Yep. I like those. But yeah, so go forth and use two-factor auth. It's good for you. Makes you more secure.